With Fated Clash just around the corner, it's time to take a look at all the new ride lines that came out of this set. We covered Rezael and Varga in the past 2 videos, and in this video, we will be taking a look at the Chronojet Killer from 2023 and it making its grand return with a bang. Welstra is a high skill combo deck that tries to play a lot of products and activate them multiple times in a turn for high value effects. The amount of power this deck can pull out is one of, if not the highest in the format. It has a ton of ways to retire the opponent's units and be able to minus the Vanguard power, and has very easy to achieve multi-attack to go along with it. First up is the new Strazer. When rode upon, you can Soul Blast 1 to add a product that's the same grade or lower as your opponent's Vanguard to your hand. Strazer now costs a soul, but in return, when going second, can grab a Lubetzel now to be able to operate on turn 2, making its turn 2 a bit more consistent. Upgrade 2 is the brand new Uber. When Uber attacks, you can Energy Blast 3 to operate a product, and when ridden upon, it can search for any 2 products with different names and add them to hand. New Uber loses out on the operator main phase, which lowers the value of Lubetzel early on, but the ride upon effect completely sets up Welstra Blitzarm's divine skill. It makes the deck a lot more consistent compared to before. And then Welstra getting slightly closer to his Iron Man suit, Fated 1 of Guiding Star Welstra Blitzarms. Welstra's new form brings in a very powerful effect with it. When it attacks, it can Energy Blast 2 and operate a product, then it gets plus 10k power as well. Welstra's divine skill is an act ability to Counterblast 1 and play 2 products from hand, and then it operates a product. This Welstra is a giant upgrade compared to its original counterpart. At first glance, it may seem a bit worse power-wise, since the on-attack operate ability now has a cost with it, and it most likely won't gain as much power as the original Welstra would. The divine skill, however, is an insanely strong upgrade for this deck. It having the ability to cheat out products into play and get an additional operate off raises the floor of this deck immensely. It can now consistently get Freischütz Maximum out into play without needing Freiheit. Going over the key cards, we have Welstra's brand new product, Extreme Satellite Weaponry Uriente? What are these names? Uriente, when placed, will Energy Charge 3 and draw a card. When operated by a Welstra with a divine skill during your battle phase, and it has been in play for at least 1 full turn, then it can give minus 10k power to the opponent's Vanguard. It retires 1 rearguard, and then it also deals 1 damage. This new product seals the deal on how strong this deck can be now, giving a deck that already minuses so much power, the ability to deal free damage increases how threatening this deck can be. Having a minus 10k debuff off of 1 operate is also really crazy when combined with all the other power minusing it can do. Also, in Vanguard, power can go negative, so it isn't unheard of for this deck to minus 20k or more power from the opponent's Vanguard. Overall though, this card really adds to the ceiling of this deck and makes the deck's turn pack a much heavier punch. The other important cards are the other products in the deck. Freischütz Maximum is still our primary operate target when Uriente isn't live. When operated, it retires a rearguard and minus 5k's the opponent's Vanguard. Then it can Counterblast 1 and bounce one of your rearguards back to hand. And then Freischütz Maximum comes out into play as a 23k power attacker. Freischütz Maximum is still our main pressure play in this deck because of the minus power and the extra attack it gains. It can also bounce our rearguards back to hand, which is really strong for a deck that has a lot of really good on-play effects that it can utilize, and also protect those important pieces from potential retire from the opponent. For our grade 2 product, we are playing Lubetzel, which is typically the product we will be hard playing each turn. Whenever it's played and you have a Blitz Vanguard, then you can draw a card and Soul Charge 1, and when operated during main phase, it will call a unit in the top 5 cards of the deck. If it's in battle phase though, it draws a card instead. Lubetzel in the early game is really strong on being able to find the pieces we need and helps dig deeper into the deck. It does have a little bit less value in here now because the original Uber was able to activate Lubetzel in main phase, but the new Uber can only use it during battle phase. So it's slightly worse in that regard, but the new Uber is just a lot better at helping set up the deck anyway. Our grade 1 product is Eingarten. When it's sent to drop zone from hand or the order zone, then it can go into soul or into the order zone. Then when it is operated, it comes into play as grade 1 with boost and 10k power. Eingarten is very versatile on being either an early game operate target to be aggressive with it, or it can be discard fodder and produces the deck an additional soul, which this deck can use soul very aggressively. All these products give the deck a healthy arsenal of options the deck has that all have their clear uses for any given situation. The last card I want to talk about is the best rearguard in the deck, which is Operate Master Freiheit. When placed, you can Counterblast 1 and discard a card to search your deck for a product or unit with the same name as your Vanguard and add it to hand. Then if your Vanguard's a Welstra, you can play a product from your hand for free. Whenever it attacks and your Vanguard's a Welstra, it can Soul Blast 2 and operate a product as well. Freiheit is very easily the best rearguard in this deck by being able to guarantee missing products or Persona Rides. And then has a pretty conditionless operate that can be used multiple times in a turn. When combining all these operates, it can quickly snowball out of control by minusing a bunch of power from the opponent and clearing the board every single turn. Freiheit can also be bounced by Freischutz's Maximum to use the on-play skill again on the next turn, or just to preserve the best operator this deck has. For Welstra's Regalis piece, it doesn't really benefit from any of them. It doesn't have good grade 3s to call from Forbidal, which makes it not a good option. It wants to save souls, so Transfer is hard to fit. The deck can tutor Persona Ride, so Grail isn't as necessary to guarantee it. It always clears its board, so Angel Bracing Ladder isn't as good. If you were to play one, it'd probably be Angel Bracing Ladder, just because it's a card that goes into Soul and draws a card. And if you do have units still in play, then keeping them in play is still pretty strong. For the Overtrigger though, you definitely play Eldo Breath in here. Making everything 2 crit while the opponent is at negative 7,000 power is very oppressive for this deck. Now, going over Mulligan, there's only really 2 cards we need to see early on. The first one is Lubetzel, because we want Lubetzel for our turn 2. And Lubetzel being able to cycle itself and fuel our soul is really nice. And if we have it with Uber, then we're able to draw a card off it as well. Now, if we go second, then we're going to be able to directly tutor Lubetzel, so we won't as desperately need to Mulligan for this card. And then we also want Freiheit as our primary operator, because Freiheit helps fully solidify our setup throughout the game because of its ability to find any missing product we might not have, or be able to guarantee Persona Ride, and then also just be a counterblastless operator. Freiheit is very important for this deck's combo attack turns later on in the game. If you do find any of the other operators this deck does play, then keeping those is fine as well. Welstra's early game is mostly just trying to set up for the strong turns later on. It uses the ride line to search for all the products it needs. Usually the only potential aggression this deck can have is with Uber operating Eingarten. Outside of that, most of the impactful rearguards in the deck need a Welstra Vanguard, which won't happen till grade 3 turn. If you are playing Iskra in the deck, then that does help the early game of this deck quite a bit by being able to operate Lubetzel during main phase and pinpoint target search the operators or other pieces you may want. During the mid game, Welstra has a very strong turn 3 by being able to set up a lot of the products in the order zone that it needs, and then having full access to its powerful rearguards like Freiheit. It primarily finishes its setup in mid game and prepares for all-out war for the rest of the game. It can still hit decently hard during this first turn because it's going to be able to minus power and be able to multi-attack off Freischutz's Maximum. Figuring out the combo and the best way to play it is pretty different each game and just fully depends on what resources you have and planning out your next turn. Welstra's late game, turn 4 and onwards, looks to keep using Uriente and Freischutz's Maximum to keep pushing for damage and forcing the opponent to start blowing through a ton of cards just to stay alive. Welstra will be blowing up multiple rearguards per turn while forcing the opponent to guard very aggressively and using a lot of cards from their hand to try to not take too much damage. This is where Welstra really shines, is that it's constantly gaining value from all of its units, and the power level of this deck is so immense that it's constantly forcing the opponent to use a lot of cards during their turn just to stay alive. Some of the strengths this deck does have is that it has one of, if not the highest power ceiling in the game. Outside of Crest decks making it to really late game states, Welstra is able to hit very hard and just gets so much value out of it. It also has consistent retiring, which can be very good into decks that care about the board a lot. Combining retiring and minusing power from the opponent's Vanguard is just generally a very strong combination because of how many resources the opponents will be spending. It's also not Persona Ride reliant for powerful turns. Because of the minus power, we are essentially gonna be getting a Persona Ride-like effect from Uriente, and even more after we start using Freischutz's Maximum as well. But it can also tutor Persona Ride directly from Freiheit, so it can consistently get there, but it's also super not necessary for this deck to have pressure. It can also also self-clear the board very easily. Because of us operating Freischütz Maximum and having our grade 1s be cards that can put themselves in the soul, like Bubble Mine, very frequently, Welstra will be ending turns with 0 rear guards, which is very strong for this deck. That way it maintains its Freiheit very easily, and Freischütz Maximum being in order makes it unable to leave the board from the opponent's decision. Some of the weaknesses this deck can face though is that it's very piece reliant. The deck doesn't really struggle with finding its products anymore. Now the main issue is trying to get to its operators consistently. It also has hardcore resource management. It can pay these costs, but you have to think about what resources it takes and think about future turns as well. A card like Bubble Mine is very strong in here because of the amount of counterblast we are spending and all the soul we are spending. So Bubble Mine does help reduce the intensity of the resources we're spending, but it's still a lot that the deck has to be wary of. And the last thing is that it has a lot of zero shield, and it sometimes kind of has a fake hand. Because of the amount of products we are playing, that's a lot of dead cards that we can't guard with. And also, a lot of this deck's draw power comes from being able to bounce your rear guards back into hand. So this deck kinda doesn't have that strong of a hand defensively because we are bouncing back our pieces that we're wanting to reuse later on. And it tends to find itself in awkward spots where it might not be able to guard efficiently. Overall though, Welstra is a powerful deck going into this format. Its insane power ceiling keeps it relevant, and a lot of the time the reason why Welstra will lose is to itself, not because of the opponent. If you find a build that works the most consistently for you, then overall that's the most important thing you can do for this deck. And that is it. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz, and I'll see you guys in the next one.